Hello and welcome. We begin with some big updates from South Africa. Weeks after a weakened election verdict, it is a day of relief for the African National Congress, and more so for Cyril Ramaphosa. He is set to be re-elected as South Africa's president for a second term, as the newly elected parliament convened earlier today. Now, this is what South Africa's new National Assembly looks like. The ANC has 159 MPs, the DA has 87, Jacob Zuma's MK party has 58 seats, Julius Malema's EFF holds 39, the IFP stands at 17, and 40 seats are held by other smaller parties. For days, the fate of Cyril Ramaphosa hung in the balance as the ANC scrambled to find political partners. After non-stop deliberations since the May 29th general election result, where the ANC lost its majority for the first time in 30 years, and 11th-hour talks on Thursday, the African National Congress finally managed to form a unity government. For the first time in 3 decades as a democracy, South Africa today has a coalition government at the national level. The African National Congress has finally found partners in 2 rival parties, the John Steenhuisen-led DA or Democratic Alliance and the Inkatha Freedom Party or the IFP. There are other smaller parties too that have agreed to join hands with the ANC. While Cyril Ramaphosa has retained the president's chair, the ANC might have to give up key posts in the government to its unity government partners. Details on how these parties would coordinate and other broader parameters of the deal are yet to be revealed.
Privileged to report to you that after 2 weeks of thorough negotiations that only concluded after today's sitting of Parliament had already started, the DA has reached agreement on the statement of intent for the formation of a government of national unity. The government of national unity's presidential candidate will come from the largest party inside the grouping, being President Cyril Ramaphosa. Following his election today, President Ramaphosa will then exercise his prerogative to appoint his new cabinet from among the members of the government of national unity in consultation with the leaders of the constituent parties.
Former ANC firebrand leaders and their parties, Jacob Zuma's MK and Julius Malema's EFF, had already rejected the ANC's offer to be a part of the unity government. 58 MPs from Zuma's MK party boycotted the parliament sitting. But this did not impact the president's vote. South Africa's constitution states that at least a third of the parliament's 400 MPs must be present for a quorum to be present and votes to take place. The ANC alone holds more than a third of the seats. While he may have been re-elected for a second term, challenges for President Ramaphosa are far from over. Next week, Cyril Ramaphosa will be sworn in Pretoria, after which he will be unveiling his new cabinet. But finalizing this cabinet will be an uphill task, with unity government partners eyeing plum posts. Many ANC supporters were opposed to a partnership with the DA because the party is seen as a defender of the interests of the privileged white minority, with the ANC supporters on one hand and the expectations of unity government partners on the other. Cyril Ramaphosa needs to pull off a tough balancing act. Now, if the DA is unsatisfied with cabinet posts offered, it could threaten to withdraw support, and this would land the ANC back in trouble and the South African country in a greater political uncertainty. Now, for more on this, we have with us political commentator Ayanda Sishi-Wigzell, who is joining us live from Johannesburg. Welcome to Firstpost. Thanks for being with us, Ayanda.
Thank you for having me.
Now, this will be President Cyril Ramaphosa's second term. What are we expecting from his second term in office, and what does he need to do to deal with the falling popularity of the ANC party?
Well, this is it's going to be a two-pronged answer, because rightfully what you said in your introduction is that he's going to now have to officially be balancing government of national unity. So a lot of political organizations are going to be involved in his cabinet and in his government. So he's going to need to make sure that as the leader of the seventh administration, he's going to have to learn how to balance those relationships. But also you need to look at the state of the country right now. There is a high cost of living. Young people are struggling to get into university and afford to have education. There's a high number of unemployment, 32.9% is the national average, and the average for youth unemployment sits at 49.5%. And so there is going to be a lot of socioeconomic battles that he's going to be facing in the seventh administration, but also it's going to be a balancing act, right, of making sure that the government of national unity can continue, because we have seen what coalitions have looked like at a local government level, and they've been lackluster, to say the least. They've been unstable. I mean, here in the city of Johannesburg, we have had 4 or 5 mayors since the last local government elections, and so that reflecting on the National Assembly on a national level would be disastrous. And so I believe that the president in his second term as president of this country is going to have a really difficult task of making sure that the partners that they have taken into this national government of unity is going to be placated. They're going to need to make sure that they are happy within the positions that they are given. So it's going to be interesting after the president is sworn in to see where it is and how it is that those relationships are going to play out when it comes to the different positions that political parties are going to be vying for.
Absolutely. On that, Ayanda, looking at the cabinet posts, what are the unity government partners seeking?
So that is actually a really interesting conversation to have, because there are different ministerial positions that are really important. All ministerial positions are important in this country, but they are key cabinet positions that are really, really powerful and can enact real change in this country, such as the ministry from the Department of International Relations and Cooperation. There is the Ministry of Finance as well. There is the Ministry of Trade and Industry, as well as the Ministry of Public Enterprises. So these ministries are incredibly important when it comes to the running and the administration of government. And so we have heard names such as Natasha Mazzoni being thrown out as Minister of Public Enterprises from the Democratic Alliance. We know that she has been very vocal in state capture while she was a part of the Portfolio Committee for Public Enterprises. We have also heard previously, but we know that I think that it's unlikely to happen, because we know that the Economic Freedom Fighters are no longer part of the government of national unity. But Floyd Shivambu's name was being touted as possibly being the next Minister of Finance, but I doubt that will happen. And so there are going to be key ministerial positions that will have to be given to different political organizations to make sure that the cabinet looks like a government of national unity, because the African National Congress did not receive a mandate from the electorate to form a cabinet with majority of their members of their political organizations. So unfortunately now for them, they are going to have to now share these political positions. So the seventh administration is going to be very interesting now to see how it is that these political parties are going to work together within government to make sure that the business of the day continues, because we know that they have deep-seated ideological differences. I mean, the Democratic Alliance has deep-seated differences to the African National Congress, especially when it comes to issues of justice and redress and ways in which we are supposed to run the economy. And so it's going to be very interesting to see how it is that these political parties are going to work together, how it is that cabinet is going to be constituted by the president of this country moving forward next week.
Yeah. And as we've mentioned, this is going to be a balancing act for Cyril Ramaphosa with members of the ANC who dislike the DA in particular. Now, is South Africa one step, or rather one misstep, away from greater political uncertainty if the DA and the ANC fail to work together?
Yes. There will be a lot of political uncertainty should political organizations fail to work together. And this is, I think, where the fear of where a lot of people are coming from, because we've seen the examples of how disastrous it can be when coalitions have failed at a local government. The city of Ekurhuleni, the city of eThekwini, here in Johannesburg, the lack of refuse collection, the lack of other service delivery services that are meant to come from the municipality were not actually coming because of that political failure. Basically, governments just stopped working. And so there is a huge fear of that happening at a national level. But what we are hearing from political organizations, I think a lot of people were saying that we wish that they were this calm and this mature during the election campaigns, instead of the politics that we saw playing out during the election campaign. Because what we're hearing now from a lot of political organizations is that they're willing to put their differences aside and are willing to work for the betterment of our democracy. And I think that's what we need more of. We need a bit more of maturity coming from our politicians, and a political will as well, to make sure that the will and the services that are meant to be done are actually going to be fulfilled by our politicians, and not just be there for the sake of being there for political power, but actually be there for the sake of the people. And now what we are seeing is that this electorate, for the first time in 30 years, has forced our politicians to make sure that they actually work together in tandem, because not one political organization got a mandate from the people. They are now being forced to work together to make sure that they get this country right. No one political party is going to be given the mandate to do that. They now have to do that together. And so it's going to be interesting to see whether or not cooler heads will prevail, because now we have a government of national unity, and now all eyes are going to be looking at South Africa to make sure that there's political maturity and there's political will to make sure that the issues that we have in this country are going to be fixed together.
Absolutely. And thank you very much for your valued insights and analysis and bringing us the latest.
Thank you very much.
Fan of Italy's famous cuisine? Well, we are serving it with a side of diplomacy. As the G7 leaders gather in southern Italy, Vantage is taking you to the heart of the action. What's the agenda? Who is invited? And how is Italy preparing for it? Catch the special edition of Vantage throughout this week, only on Firstpost. Fan of Italy's famous cuisine? Well, we are serving it with a side of diplomacy. As G7 leaders gather in southern Italy, Vantage is taking you to the heart of the action. What's the agenda? Who is invited? And how is Italy preparing for it? Catch the special edition of Vantage throughout this week, only on Firstpost.